Hey everybody, Michael LeJeune here with Game Changers for Government Contractors. And today we are going to be talking about the Waterfall versus Agile proposal methods with my friend Tony Gray here. And before we get started, I'd like Tony, just take a minute, tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Great to be on the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So
Yeah.
this is quite an honor to finally be on the Game Changers podcast. So
Awesome.
thank you. Yeah, a little bit of background information on me. 30 years in industry, and I started in business development, in particular, in 2011. That was really my first start, and just kind of broke into the field like a lot of folks do. There's no
Mm,
specific career path. Typically, you ask every business developer how they got into BD, and they'll give you a different story.
yeah.
So mine is just as random as everybody else's. Started in operations, and then eventually made my way into BD just through a relationship that I had, somebody that was willing to kind of roll the dice on me after spending about 10 years trying to break into BD. Never could
Mm,
manage to break into the profession because people would always tell me, well, you don't have the experience. Okay, where do I get the experience? Well, you have to have a BD job. Well, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
right.
Or you don't have the Rolodex for it. You don't have the network for it. And later, I was told by one of my favorite bosses and chief growth officers, he said, if any business developer says they're getting a job because of their network, they'll probably be out of a job in about a year and a half after they burn through their Rolodex. So,
Yeah.
and then finally, people would say, well, you don't have the education for it. And I said, well, I have an MBA. What other education do I need? And so,
Right.
having gone through all those trials and tribulations, um, the month after COVID started, I decided, you know what? Our profession of business development needs a certification on par with like the PMP or SHRM has. When you look at a lot of these
Hmm.
professional trade associations, they all have some sort of professional certification. And I looked around and BD didn't have anything like that. I was a PMP. I went through the PMP certification process. Great process, high quality, every step of the way. And I thought, wow, we really need something like this for business developers so that 30-year-old Tony could break into BD without having to go through 10 years of trials and tribulations
Right.
like I did. So, they say that Isaac Newton created calculus during a pandemic. I decided to do something much harder than that, and I decided to write the business development body of knowledge. Again, the PMBOK is for project management body of knowledge. I looked at a lot of the body of knowledges that were out there for these trade associations, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to use those as models. I'm going to write the business development body of knowledge. Spent 3 years doing that. I think about a year into it, I had close to 2,000 pages of notes.
Wow.
And I think I almost lost my mind trying to pull together all of the different pieces of business development and break it down to its first principles. And so, published the book 2 years ago this month. And we have folks that are now BDP certified. We have an online certification process called the Business Development Professional Certification. And it is designed for business developers. Everything is online. You read the BD block, you take the exam. Best part, it's all open book.
Mm,
We're not trying to test your memory skills. We want to emphasize the key points of business development. So you could be a success in your first job. So you can have that
yeah.
competency you need to succeed. And so I told somebody the other day that's a fellow business developer. He said, wait a second, you said it's open book. Well, if it's for business developers and it's open book, at least you should have them drink 2 bourbons while they take the exam to make sure they're true business developers. So, but it's open book, unlimited attempts to pass. And we have an initial cadre of folks that have been BDP certified.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
That's awesome. It's quite a task when you're just writing a book. It's a whole other task when you're writing something that's kind of a manual, if you will. I've seen the body of knowledge that you wrote, and the thing is, it's huge. It's awesome. So it's a good job there, and I know what it's like to go through 2,000 pages of notes and try to condense it down. So
Yeah.
there's always something else you want to include or whatever. So kudos to you guys for just being able to go through it. So one of the things we want to talk about today is this whole waterfall versus agile proposal method. And I think just to kick us off, why don't you just tell us what it is? Because I think people just know, well, there's just a proposal method. So what are you talking about? There's two types of proposal methods. Define that for folks that are listening that have no clue what that means.
Sure. So I'll tell you a scenario that I think will resonate with every business developer listening to this, every proposal manager, everybody who's ever written a proposal will probably identify with this scenario. You get to proposal kickoff, and you assign writing assignments to all the SMEs, and you tell everybody, okay, go away, come back in a week, and we'll do pink team review. Okay, everybody provides their written responses to the proposal manager. It's all assembled. You do a pink team review, you look at it, and then you realize nobody's written to the win themes, nobody's written to the ghosting themes. People just cut and pasted from what they wrote before. And here's the worst part, they didn't even bother to change the
Hmm.
name of the previous client that they were pitching to,
Right.
right? And you look at this thing, and then you admonish everybody and say, no, 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 here's the win themes, here are the ghosting themes, here's what we really want you guys to write. Come back at Red Team. You come back at Red Team and you realize you're just trying to put Humpty Dumpty together. And
Hmm.
now you are in crisis mode, because now you have nothing that is consistent in theme and writing style and
Yeah.
voice, hardly any proof points, and it's a mess. And and when I started my own business development consulting practice about 7 or 8 years ago, I would never hard sell any prospect. I would always tell them, look, if you ever get to a red team and it's a mess, call me. That's,
Hmm.
I think, out of the 2 dozen clients that I had, I think almost every one of those clients I picked up at Red Team when they called me and said, look, Tony, this thing's a mess. You said call you when it's in trouble. What can you do to help out? And so I kind of created this agile proposal process. And it really adopts a lot of the agile software development principles that
Hmm.
were created in the early 2000s. And I'm sure a lot of folks listening are very familiar with those principles. But the idea is to try and break down the task into small pieces, dynamically provide updates, and get it done in a quick, dynamic fashion that's more collaborative than the existing approach.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Like I think when I think about proposal methods, I do think exactly how you're describing that first scenario where people do all their writing, they come together, and you're like you said, they didn't even change the customer name, any of that. It's literally a cut and paste, and they haven't looked at anything, and here we are, significantly down the road and out of time. And I think that's the big thing. So um, it sounds like you started this to simply create a better method of how to write a proposal. I mean, that sounds like the basis of let's start this process so we have a better proposal method. So what do you see as the big differences between waterfall and agile?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, you talk about being able to do proposal development faster. And
Mm,
I was consistently bringing in proposals ready for white glove, ready to go 30% faster than before, with
mm,
30% less resources and a lot less frustration. So maybe it'll help if I kind of break down the key attributes
that'd be great.
of agile proposal development. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the team leader. Now, in the typical waterfall approach, you have a team leader that's a proposal manager. Nothing
Mm,
wrong with proposal managers. They're great. They're a critical asset to the team. But often proposal managers are not writers. They don't know a lot about the customer unless they've been involved in proposals with that customer in the past. And they don't have a lot of technical knowledge. Again,
mm,
not a reflection on proposal managers. It's a noble
right.
profession, again, very critical. But right there, you're starting off with somebody that doesn't really know a lot about the customer, and those are key attributes of success for a proposal, is something that resonates with the customer. So if you're
Mm,
being led by somebody who doesn't even know anything about the customer or the technical solution, you're already kind of starting off on rocky footing.
Right.
Now, let's compare that with the Agile process. The Agile process is led by a professional writer, somebody who writes
Mm.
extremely well, somebody who understands the industry, somebody who understands the customer. And that person has a lot stronger knowledge base to rely on. And that person also leads the writing effort. If you look at a lot of the proposals that are required. If you look at technical volume, management volume, which are your big writing volumes, of course, you have your past performance volume. But if you look at those major volumes, they don't typically add up to more than 30 pages, maybe 40 pages. The government doesn't want to read a lot, especially
Right.
if they're professional services. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're bidding on a major weapon system or building a bridge or a building or something like that, those are very complex, very detailed in engineering
Yeah.
attributes, and those are all very extensive proposals. But when you look at majority of them, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, Mike, but most of them, they're 30, 40 pages at most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. The core stuff.
so I would write the proposals myself, and clients now they would, my first clients would they would say, wait a second, you're going to write the whole thing yourself? I said, yeah, I've done this before. And they said, well, what if you don't? And I said, well, you fire me. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
um, Now, needless to say, we never had a problem. We always had a proposal ready to go. Like I said, 30% faster than before. So that's the primary difference from a leadership perspective. The next thing is the content writing methodology. Okay, when you look
Mm.
at Waterfall, the content writing, just like I mentioned in the scenario, you get everybody together at kickoff and you go, okay, we're going to get all our SMEs together. Everybody who's on the team, tell me who your SMEs are, and we'll delegate those writing assignments to all those subject matter experts. And guess what? Most of those subject matter experts, they are direct billable employees. They are
Mm.
probably helping clients on a day-to-day basis in their 9 to 5 job. And then you're saying, no, you don't get extra hours in the 9 to 5. You still have to help all your clients. But on top of that, when you're at home with your family and your kids and everything else, tell you what, why don't you work on this proposal this week and write something clever? Spend a lot of time doing that, won't you? Oh, by the way, you're an engineer, so you didn't take a lot of English writing classes
Right.
in college, did you? No. Oh, and you hate to write? Perfect. You're the perfect person to write this section for us, right? And so I would look at this when I started business development. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are we putting these poor people through the ringer here? They hate it. They're not good at it, or some of them aren't good. There are some great SMEs who are great writers, love to write, but they certainly don't have the time for it
Right.
to dedicate to it. So now let's compare that with the Agile methodology. Like I said, you're having the proposal written by an expert writer. Um,
Mm.
the other thing too is that expert writer knows all the win themes, the ghosting themes, the proof points, your past performance, your competitive intel. So as they're writing that first draft, they're writing from one common voice. They're ensuring that all of those key elements are in there. So you get to first draft and often looks like red team. It's almost ready for prime. I've had clients tell me in the past, wait a second, uh, is this the first draft? I mean, is this pink team? Because this looks like we're ready to go. Let's go right to white glove.
Yeah.
So you that's where you really pick up a lot of this speed element. And then here's the other great thing, and the subject matter expert, they love this in the Agile approach, because what I would do is I would get all the SMEs in a room at kickoff and I say, none of you will write. And you could hear that exhalation of relief,
Yeah.
of like, oh, what? You're kidding me. I'm not going to have to write. And I'd say, but look, what you will have to do is you're going to have to sit down with me, this poli-sci major, and explain to me in very simple terms what our solution is. And we're going to whiteboard this thing for 2 hours, and we're going to get the BD folks in here, and we're going to throw in our proof points and sprinkle in some competitive intel. And then what's great about that is, first, the subject matter experts love it. The BD people love it. It's not a big investment of time, and everybody loves to, talk about their great ideas. And then what's great is then, as that lead writer, what you're doing is you're kind of choreographing everything. But here's a really important part. You're finding the gaps early on. Okay.
Mm.
You're not waiting till 2 weeks at Red Team to realize, oh, wait a second, we have a whole section of our proposal that's missing because nobody knows what the answer is. And maybe we don't know what the technical solution is for that part, or we don't know the competitive intel for that part. In the Agile approach, you're doing that pretty much day one in that meeting with the SMEs
Yeah.
and the BD folks. And you're going, okay, guys, tell me this, tell me that. Well, wait a second. Doesn't sound like, I'm not understanding what you're telling me here. Why is that? Is either because we're not explaining it well, or B, we don't know the answer. So, okay, you don't know the answer to that. Subject matter experts, go find the answer to that. Or BD folks, go get some competitive intel and give us the answer on what competition's doing here. And so now what you're doing is you're operating from a position of, okay, where are the gaps? Where are we weakest? Okay, let's work on those. Okay, because the writing process is pretty much done very quickly in week one. So that's a big difference on the content writing side. And I'll just pause right there, see what kind of comments you have so far,
Yeah.
Michael.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is, how do you change the culture that is so used to doing it the old way? You know,
Mm.
you've got like I can see a scenario where you come in, you start explaining this to people, and they're like, "What? So who's now in charge of doing the writing, and how's this gonna? What do I do with Tim, who is he's my proposal manager? What do I do? What is Tim going to do for the next month while we're working on this? And well, these guys don't have the writing. Or like the culture shock for the business owner or VP of sales or BD or whatever it is, whatever that leadership position is, to me, that's where some of the magic has to happen up front to be able to get them on board with even trying this new method, because you're drastically changing who's controlling the process, who the writers are, how it's being done. um, Talk to me about like maybe some of those questions you've had to overcome with that to get people to try this, because I know some people listening to this are saying, well, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to my team that we're doing this differently. So
Yeah, what a profound question. I love it. And let's just talk through the different personas involved in the team, right?
yeah,
And their typical response that I encountered. So we talked about the SMEs and the BD folks. Love it, right?
yeah,
I mean, they're doing cheetah flips around the
yeah.
conference
You
room
don't have to
table of
convince them at all. They're
that's
they're
right.
on board. They're ready to
I
go.
love
Yeah,
this. This is great, right?
yeah,
The old joke in the industry, right, is how do you clear a room full of BD people? You throw a solicitation in the middle of the room, and then you watch it, tell them they have to write, and watch them jump out of the
yeah,
windows and doors trying to get away from
yeah.
writing. So those folks love it. Easy, no problem. Proposal managers, it was a kind of 50-50, but most of them kind of saw, they were kind of relieved, like, wow, because oftentimes
Mm,
it just gets foisted on them when red team turns into a disaster, and then the CEO turns to the proposal manager and says, fix it, person who knows nothing about the customer, person who doesn't
yeah,
know
yeah,
how to write. Hey, fix it. And oh, by the way, you have like 6 other bids that you're working on, so just fix this one, right? And so proposal managers, for the most part, they really liked it. It just took a little bit of time for proposal managers to adapt to the common operational picture, the situational
mm,
awareness of trying to monitor, okay, well, where are we? Because now their paradigm has always been, pink team, red team, so on and so forth, the kind of this waterfall method of, okay, and here's the other thing. The waterfall method is it's a cascading design, right? I mean, that's waterfall by its
mm,
essence. So it's a very linear. So at kickoff, a proposal manager goes, well, the solicitation says the proposal is due 30 days from now, so we have to do 4 reviews, so
yeah,
let's just divide that by 5. It's like this arbitrary approach with no no understanding of how hard something is
right,
going to be to write. And
right,
so but that is the proposal management paradigm, kind of based on the Shipley process, although I'll say the Shipley process is a great methodology, often poorly executed by folks. So proposal managers, the challenge for them was, okay, well, how do I know if we're like on track? Um, and so what I would do is kind of introduce them to this concept of, look, I will update you on a daily basis, and I'll tell you we're gonna do a gap based approach. So I'll tell you, I would have a stoplight chart, and I would tell them, okay, this section we are green, yellow, or red. And so everybody loved this because they could very quickly
mm,
see, okay, we're green, 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 green. Well, we have a red. Okay, that's where I need the proposal manager's help. Okay, this is where I need the team's help. And so that having kind of that stoplight approach was very intuitive for proposal managers to understand. Um, and it really resonated with them. But sometimes they would say, okay, well, when are we doing the review? And I would tell them we're doing the review based on when we have gaps filled, or we have, we're at a point when it's
Mm.
ready for a review. Here's the other thing that would be very difficult for proposal managers to wrap their head around is the actual review process. I would tell them, look, the typical way of doing a proposal review is you get folks that are typically business leaders from your company, maybe the BD person, and they review the bid, not the SMEs. Usually it's these folks who sometimes they don't even know anything about the customer as well. And then what you get back are all these typo changes, grammar changes. There's nothing about the win themes or ghosting themes. And it's like, guys, I have spell check on my machine. I don't need you to spell check my work.
Right, right.
I need you to give me answers. Okay. And so what I would tell in the agile approach, what I would say is, look, no offense to the leaders in the company, but you're not reviewing the bid. Okay. I'm having the SMEs who help design the solution, the BD people who know the competitive intel, who know the customer. They're going to review it. Okay. Because they're going to give me substantive inputs. They're going to say, oh yeah, tech solution XYZ is actually, you have to say it like ABC, Tony. Okay, great. That's what I need. I don't
Right,
need spelling check and grammar check.
right.
So for the proposal manager, those are the two elements they really had to kind of wrap their head around: is scheduling and then tracking progress. Now, the last persona to talk about is the corporate leadership. These were the most difficult
Yeah, I can
to,
see that. Yeah,
to convince because, let's face it, some are control freaks. And understandably, they built
yeah.
their company from zero. Okay. And they did it themselves, so kudos to them. They did it by doing a lot themselves. They were the original
Right.
proposal writers when they started. They were the original PMs when they started. And many of them were direct billable, chief cook, bottle washer, everything at
Yep,
once.
yep.
So, when they get to a certain point in their company, they still kind of have those attributes. And I'll also say too, when you're a small business, you have to be very disciplined about where you spend your B&P, your bid and proposal investments. You can't go after everything. You have to be very disciplined. You have to go on those high P win, high strategic advantage opportunities, and you have to go all in on them. The agile approach is different. And what I found is that companies, once they kind of get to about 100 to 150 employees, that's kind of when the wheels fall off the bus. That's when the control
Mm.
freak CEO starts to realize, I can't keep up with all of my BD, all of my direct operations, and then all of my people problems, all personally. I have to start delegating. And what
Right,
they also realize is I need to get increased scale in my proposal operations. If I want to scale my business and grow, I have to rapidly scale my business growth through proposal. I have to get my bid numbers up.
right.
And so I would tell them, look, agile is your pathway to do that. If you can get more bids out in a year, would you like that? If you could get bids done 30% cheaper, 30% faster, would you do that? And they would say yes. And then I'd say, okay, well then trust me, this is your pathway to do this.
Mm.
You have to migrate to agile, and you have to go gap based. Okay. If you're worried about where we are, follow me on the gap based. Here's the important thing I would always tell them too, because this part was really hard for those leaders to get their heads around. Like I said before, when you're small, you go all in on your B&P. Okay, it all chips on this one bit. I've got a high P win. I've done all my homework. I've been doing capture for 2 years. I have all the pieces in place. I have all the right teammates. I'm going in on this. Okay. When you get to the agile, when you get to a point where you have to scale your operations, I tell them you have to stop that. You have to go into bidding like you're walking into the casino in Vegas. Okay.
Mm.
You have to spread your chips. Okay. And you spread your chips based on your gap. If I could tell you where we have gaps in bids at any time, if we have 4 bids in process, you can look at my stoplight chart and you can see, whoa, this one has no red lights. We're green. Yes, I'll continue pushing my chips forward on that one. I'll continue allocating B&P resources to that. Okay, whoa, I'm looking at this other bid here. I see a lot of red lights, Tony. Okay, a lot of gaps. I tell them, look, we don't have a technical solution here, here, and here. And then what they're doing now is kind of a gambler's mentality of, okay, well, I'm going to keep all my chips moving on this one that has all green lights. Red, not looking so good. I'm going to start pulling back some chips on that one. I'm still going to submit the bid, okay, because we've already invested time and effort, that sort of thing. As long as we're compliant, okay, do it, but you're not going to get all my chips. I'm going to start pulling some chips back and maybe reallocating those to others that have more green lights or others that we're just in the early phases on. So it's
Yeah.
kind of, that was important for the leadership to really wrap their heads around. And once they started to figure that out, they were saving, a lot of time on writing proposals. They were reducing the amount of BNP they were spending, and they were getting a higher return on
Mm,
investment in their BNP.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. One of the things that I can think if I'm listening to the podcast today is, and I know this is kind of a little bit down the rabbit hole question here. But if I'm listening to this, I would say, is there a preferred solution? I'm sure you're going to say it works with everything out there, but I don't know if you've found like a preferred software solution or cloud solution that you tend to use with this for that trackings to share things and stuff like that, to do the writing in, to share your stoplight chart, things like that. Do you have a recommendation for people? Because I know every time I talk to somebody, regardless of what method you're using, that's one of the questions that come up. What are you guys using for that to do your proposals and stuff? And do you have any recommendations there?
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint.
No, I'm just kidding. No,
That'd be hilarious.
no, yeah, you had the basic solutions: PowerPoint, SharePoint. They're fine.
Yeah.
They're manpower intensive. Here's the challenge with those: it's they're fine from a presentation standpoint. They're difficult from a communication standpoint
Hmm.
because now you're just shuffling around PowerPoint files, and it's hard for the leadership, proposal managers to kind of keep everything straight.
Yes.
I never used this solution with my clients because I don't think it was available at the time, but I've found since then Capture Exec. I think is a pretty good tool because it kind of
Okay.
layers in with it integrates with a lot. I think a fair number of CRM platforms, and it gives leadership at any point in time, they can log in and they can see the status of all their bids. And there's a way you can customize it so that they can see, how your company, your key milestones you like, for example, I have a spreadsheet of over 120 key milestones that you have to hit to
Mm.
submit a successful bid. I know with RSM, you have a lot of great process content, checklists. I've seen your material; it is always top notch. And so, as it's a process. You have to hit those gates. You have to hit those milestones,
Yep.
because if you're not hitting those milestones on time, then you're already behind the
Yeah,
eight
you're the
ball.
bottleneck.
Um,
Yeah.
I would call it capture math. If the capture math isn't adding up, okay, stop spending
Stop spending time on it.
100% of your BMP on that thing. Start backing off of it. But you have to have that visibility to dynamically do that. And I think capture exec also allows you to kind of allocate your BMP dynamically as well.
Okay.
So it's a good feedback mechanism. So that the proposal teams can update it so leadership can see, but then leadership can also say, okay, well, I know I promised you, you know, you know, a certain amount for BNP when we started all this, but I'm going to start ratcheting back. And so the team can start to see, the boss is already starting to ratchet back
Yeah.
BNP. Okay, let's start spending less time.
Yeah.
So I think out of all those tools that may be out there, they kind of went in from the perspective of let's try to solve this problem of situational awareness
Yep.
for capture. What have you seen any tools, or what typically do you recommend to
You
your
know,
clients? I'm curious.
we typically don't recommend anything actually because everybody is so different. Like you said, I mean, we've got people trying to manage things with Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint charts, and some are using Monday.com, some are using. There's just so many choices out there. I haven't heard of Capture Exec, so that's an interesting one that I'd love to check out. And there's all of the bid matching tools out there trying to roll in their own CRM to quote manage the process, and a pipeline type of thing or pipeline environment. But I don't really see anybody doing it really well. Um, it's I always tell people, like, you're really good at CRM. Why are you guys trying to do this? Or you're really good at the bid manager, why are you trying to do this? And it's like, well, to keep people in there, to make it sticky, and like, just do better at what you're doing, not try to introduce something there, because now you've got this big clunky thing that nobody wants to use, or you got like 5% of your users using it, and now you're taking development time away from the thing, your core thing, right? And so, yeah, I haven't seen a lot of good ones out there. So I'd be interested to look at Capture Exec. So, um,
Well, what's interesting, Mike, is what you said about the different tools that are trying to kind of migrate into that space. And so that kind of sparked my idea of, what's really been taking off and is super exciting for me over the past year watching this is the AI tools
mm,
that are writing the proposals. And
yeah,
I've sat through several demos there are about 6 vendors out there that have some really good solutions, and they all pretty much have kind of the same functionality. And I think what's really exciting for me is the AI tools are congruent with an agile methodology. I think if you
mm,
start to go in with AI tools and you're using Waterfall, I think you're going to find it maybe a little bit challenging.
yeah,
And so because here's what these AI tools are doing. They're doing a lot of what I used to do as when I was doing proposal writing for folks. It's taking your pre-existing content, which is code reuse is the word in agile software development methodology. And so, and I would do this manually. I would say, okay, we've already written this solution before for other bids. I'm not going to take the time to rewrite everything. Subject matter experts, here it is. Tell me what I just need to change. Okay,
yeah,
guys. And so, the AI tools are doing that. So you can get here's how I would use the AI tools now is first of all, I would use it on a lot more bids. So
yeah,
it enables your bid volume to go up, your bid your numbers to go up. You can do a lot more bids. You can do it a lot more efficiently, and it's cheap, right? I mean, you're paying for a license. Some of them
yeah,
are all you can eat.
yeah,
And so what I would do is I just turn it loose on a solicitation, and it pulls in all your past performance. It pulls in all your previous proposal volumes. It knows your voice. It knows your proof points. It knows, all those things. And then it generates a compliant outline. It generates a compliant proposal within minutes.
yeah,
Okay, so very quickly you can say, even on bluebirds now, Mike, which I know that's heresy to say, oh, bid on a bluebird, right? Okay, but even on bluebirds, you could, and then what you very quickly can do now is assign a stoplight chart to the proposal that the AI wrote.
yeah,
Um, and so now you can look at the 3 C's of a successful bid, right? Is it credible? Is it compliant? Is it compelling? Okay, well, compliant, yes, because the machine already did the work for you. It's breaking down the solicitation. It's compliant. Of course, you want to double check everything with a human. Is it credible? It's pulling in all your proof points. And
yeah,
and actually, what's interesting is it's giving some of these tools are actually giving you scores. So you're already getting those red light, yellow light, green light within minutes, within 5 minutes,
hmm,
Mike, which used to take days,
right,
sitting around tables of meetings. And so now what you're also seeing is some of the tools can tell you, okay, you have a gap here. It's going to pull in stuff off of Google or whatever just to fill that gap, but it's going to tell you this part is very weak. So now very quickly you can turn to your SMEs, your BD folks, and say, folks, here it is. Focus on this. And then the agile writer is just in there, just fine tuning. So now where I was saving folks 30% of the time and 30% BMP, I can only imagine how much more
mm,
people are saving now
yeah,
if they use agile with AI.
yeah. The AI
Hugely
side is,
powerful.
yeah, the AI side is, people are just getting their toes in the water on that, and there's still so many people that are resisting. It's going to be interesting to have a similar conversation, say 5 years from now. Just like I'm actually writing a new book right now, and I was talking about how I've been working at home since 2001. So when COVID rolled around, I was like, now you guys all get to feel like I feel, right? And how we work. And I've been using, video conferencing and stuff like that since 99. That was a key part of how we were doing business. And, if you ask somebody to be on Teams or on Zoom in 2019, they would laugh at you. Like, no, I don't want any part of that. And then post COVID, like you, if you send an invite and it's just a phone number, people are like late to the thing. Like, I'm looking for the link to join and I can't find it and I don't
Right.
know what's going on. Like,
Right.
it's totally changed how they operate. So I think we're still in a major transition on the AI side because there's nothing forcing people to do it yet, right? Yet. But there's going to be a tipping point over the next 2 years where people are going to be like, I know I don't want to do it, but I got to do it. And so it's going to be interesting to hear that conversation because the speed at which you can do things, the speed for us to do things is wild with like just the automatic transcription piece that comes with these services now, and how you can drop in an AI tool and clean up the transcription because the tools never do a great job of it. And now some of them are getting better. But even like editing a podcast now, there's tools built in. We use Riverside for our platform. There's tools built in that'll do the editing for you, that'll create clips that are man, I think these are the best clips in the whole thing, create a dozen clips, for you to share on social media. And so the speed at which you can do stuff is crazy. And I'm going to say this last thing before we close up here about the AI side. I know people have a ton of concerns about it, but you're just going to have to use it anyway. You're going to have to get over it. I mean, there's really, there's no reason to have too many concerns. And like I tell people, if you've got concerns about it, just don't put that stuff in it. If there's something that's really proprietary, don't put that in there. But there's so much of your stuff that's generic about a proposal that everybody's going to write about. Oh, this is how you build a house. Okay, well, first, you lay a foundation, and then you do the framing, and then the plumbing, and then like that. Everybody's going to say that. So, I mean, there's part of your intellectual property that's a little bit different. So don't put that in there. But otherwise, there's so much of it that's the same. So people need to get over the fear of the AI side. So is there anything we missed on the agile side that you want to say as we close up today?
No, Mike, I think we covered the waterfront on agile proposal development. I
Awesome.
think it is the gateway to the future, particularly when you consider AI. I think it's going to be disruptive to some traditional waterfall roles like graphic designer, like technical writer, like proposal manager. I
Yeah.
think we're going to get to a point in the very near future. Just like you said, we're going to hit a tipping point with
Yeah.
AI, and people are going to say AI plus agile.
Yeah.
That's
You
my
got to
magic
change.
recipe because my
Yeah.
competitors are doing it. I need to do it, and teams will evolve. Those roles will evolve, and I think we're going to get to a point where we'll probably have a role called agile proposal developer, somebody who has
Nice.
technical acumen, has writing acumen, has proposal management acumen, and can look at what an AI puts out and goes, that looks like an hallucination to me. I
Yeah.
need we need to fix that piece a little
That's
bit.
awesome.
But hey, look, everything else is good to go. Let's rock and roll, and let's start winning more bids.
I like it. I like it. Well, thanks, Tony. I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this. I think it's a really important topic, and just it hits so many areas of the business, and business development, sales, whatever people want to call it. This is where the company grows. This is where the company grows. And you talked about scale. Your ability to scale will determine how quickly you grow, how big you grow. So that's a really important one. So, but thank you for coming on and talking about this. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be here.